Alright, this is just me recording, me doing my homework. Oh boy, how bad can this be? Let's see, a Guardian article. Wait, what? I swear, one of these days I'm gonna be provided an article I can't read due to subscription blockades. Meat is revered in Monterrey, where I was born, but I learned that vegetables have a storied place in Mexican cuisine. Hold on one second. Oh. In December, I received a phone call from my father, which, through no fault of his own, tends to fill me with dread. So, Mom says you're vegan now, my dad said. You're not eating meat or dairy at all? No eggs, no cheese? My shoulders eased up. I lived far enough away from home for long enough to know that a phone call is often a precursor for bad news, the kind of that not fit for a text message, but thankfully, this wasn't that. This conversation wasn't about tragedy or illness, but I still feel into the serious topic category, what I wanted to eat on vacation. I had called my mom the day before and told her that I would only be eating fish on our annual holiday trip to Mexico to visit family. Fish. After a noticeable pause, she drummed up her usual enthusiastic support. You know what? I think it's great. The scope of my dietary experiment grew overnight in a concerned game of telephone. I hadn't made a big deal out of it, but the stakes were perhaps a bit higher than I wanted to concede. I was risking confused looks and questions, and potentially even offending some relatives. Maybe worse, I was risking missing out. I'm just making sure, my dad insisted. After I clarified that I was not vegan, I just want to make sure we have enough food for you at Christmas. Like my mom, my dad made it sound easy, but in Mexico, where my extended family lives, meat is first, revered, king. Monterrey, where I was born, is considered the capital of carne asadas. There, cabrito, or roasted kid goat, is the delicacy. I had tried going vegetarian once as a teenager, only for it to wreak havoc on our annual Christmas tamale order. As I grew older, my ties to my Mexican identity felt threatened by my wish to go meatless. I really didn't think I could do it. But living away grants you this discretion of experiment. I'd only cut out meat on a handful of trips to Mexico. One year, with my dad's help, I had plenty of quesadillas, cheese tamales, and tortas de aguacate. As long as the avocado wasn't scarfed up by another family member who didn't realize it was my whole meal. The truth is, I have been flirting with not eating meat for a long time. I'm an editor who works on The Guardian's climate and environment coverage. While I know the climate crisis is not my individual fault, I can't help but look at a cheeseburger and think about all the greenhouse gas emissions that come from raising meat for human consumption. During the lockdown period of the pandemic, I found it easy to cut meat and dairy at home. I stopped craving meat except for very special occasions. This was harder to keep up when I went home, especially when adopting the formal title of vegetarian. My parents live in Texas, where Tex-Mex cooking still revolves around stuck cuts of steak, chicken, and pork. In my studio apartment in Brooklyn, it was easier. When my grandma called to ask me how I was doing, the first question was whether I was having a good place to buy meat nearby. I knew she was abstaining, even though I hadn't announced anything officially. From the way she remained suspicious, even after I answered, yes, guilt lingered, but the more I looked around, the more I realized there is Mexican food before meat, and there is Mexican food after. And the part is joy, and the part of the joy is finding your way to the after. Mexican food in the US isn't a monolith. A burrito in El Paso, Texas looks radically different from a San Francisco one, but popular, Americanized versions of it are largely synonymous with meat. Think fajitas. And the idea that meat should be the centerpiece of all Mexican cuisine is pervasive in many circles, Anglo or otherwise. Growing up in the border cities of Tijuana and San Diego, writer and recipe developer Andrea Alaceda was often told you couldn't be Mexican if you didn't eat meat. For some time, I tried to be vegetarian during the week only to crack over the weekend, bowing my head to a taco. She told me over email recently that he felt like the epitome of Mexicanness to me, a communion culturally and gastronomically. These myths didn't hold true for long. At 24, Aliceta went vegan, after a 3 year stint of eating meat. In that moment, she said, I definitely thought I was severing a connection with my Mexican gastronomy. It was only later that she realized going vegan opened the door to another side of cuisine entirely. Alicetta's forthcoming book, Plant Based Mexican Food, joins a growing array of cookbooks and resources on how to veganize popular Mexican dishes. Like Edgar Castrejon's Provecho, her work, like that many of other authors and cooks, shines a light on the long history of vegetarian foodways in Mexican cooking. Despite popular ideas of what Mexican food should be, vegetables have a storied place in this cuisine. In pre-Hispanic times, milpa farming systems were used to grow corn, beans, squash, and chiles. This ancient practice is still carried out today throughout Mesoamerica, providing a nutritious diet for its stewards. Varieties of Mexican cuisines that prize meat above all risk eliding these histories. A few years ago, I rolled my eyes nonstop when a friend invited me to a dinner at Ha Ha Ha, Ha Ha, a vegan Mexican restaurant near New York's Chinatown. The phrase vegan Mexican felt nonsensical to me, and I was probably said as much. But when I went back there last month and was amazed at the tofu drizzle on its mushroom taco, this crema felt true to the spirit and presentation of classic Mexican dishes. New York gets a bad rap for its Mexican food offerings when compared to Texas and California, but I found that chefs and restaurateurs in the city are opening up with ambitious possibilities for vegetarians and vegans. At the Brooklyn-based Cafe for All Things Good, owner Matt Diaz said he and his business partner never set out to open a vegetarian restaurant. They didn't bill themselves as such. It took me several bites to realize their tinga was made of carrots. They consider the restaurant a molino above all else, a place that makes and sells fresh tortillas. The restaurant prepares these through nixtamalization, a process that soaks and boils corns in lime and water. This gives masa a higher nutritional value and a deeper flavor than traditional corn tortillas sold in stores. Even as Diaz hewed to one tradition, he didn't feel obligated to add meat. As I was developing the menu and writing the recipes, it felt like if you really worked on the recipes, you could finish every single one before adding a protein, or a meat rather, and said Diaz. And then it felt almost like being lazy to throw in chorizo or chicken. Diaz projected their business would potentially triple if they added meat to the menu, but for now, the plan is to stay vegetarian. I like the challenge of keeping the menu vegetarian. If you're creative, it can be really fun, and I feel better about it morally, he added, laughing. Like me, Diaz isn't vegetarian, but we both worry about eating too much meat. These days, there's no end of ways for not totally veg to identify. Flexitarian, social omnivore. Ixta Belfridge, a London-based cook and recipe developer whose forthcoming book Mezcla offers new takes on Mexican, Brazilian, and Italian fare, says she recently worked with someone who only eats meat 10 times a year. She's making so much less of an impact, and she's still getting to have it when she wants. So she's like, I know, I'm always want it on Christmas Day, so that's one of my days, and I'll want it on Boxing Day, because there's the ham, so that's 2 more days. She's making so... As we chatted over a video call, Belfresh confessed she was a recipe testing a duck dish for an upcoming pop-up, which I feel bad about now, because we're talking about vegetables, she said. But Belfresh's approach to cooking, Mezcla is about 70% vegetarian, she told me, is a reminder that eating less meat can be a step in the right direction for those worried about their diet's environmental impact. When meat dominates the imagination, and tends to mean anything without meat gets cast as lacking, boring, unexceptional, even as it breaks the rule, but saying no one can mean saying yes to a million others. The second time I visited Mexico after a pandemic began, when my gracious and beautiful all-knowing grandma was dying, and we were meant to say goodbye, I sat inside with my godmother when I told her nervously on my first day that I wasn't eating meat this time. She disappeared into the living room to watch YouTube recipes. Hours later, she prepared a simple dish of roasted mushrooms, braised with onion, garlic, cumin, paprika, oregano. She made me a plate with tortillas and beans. I loved her completely in that moment. Her way of showing me affection also showed me a way to be in the world. Even as I was preparing to lose one of the fiercest defenders, I said thank you, and I pulled up a chair. Huh. can relate to this article a lot. I became a pescatarian around like 2 years ago, and yeah, it's just like I remember it was the Farmer John's factory meat processing plant that closed down. And I was reading the article. I was like, oh, that place near my home, it's closing down. Yeah, it's kind of good riddance. I remember all those protests going around it, and it was like, you know, maybe it's meant to be. Just close it up, move somewhere else. That's when I decided to, you know what? I'm just gonna be a pescatarian. No more meat. I said as I was halfway done eating my burrito. I was like, no more. I didn't finish the burrito. It was around like summer, July, around that time. Like a week before Anime Expo. It was like, I think I went home, like, I'm gonna eat normal meat. Yeah. And I haven't eaten meat. Only on like special occasions. Or when like someone in a party offers me food. Like, we don't have anything else, like fish. Is meat okay? I say, yeah, sure. I'm not gonna refuse. That'd be really, really rude. I can't do that. But yeah. But since I started eating fish, I'd have to say my family started eating meat less, because they're not buying um meat for me, so they're buying more other things. I remember the first time my mom started making um a fish seafood soup, which she's never made before. And it's like it's really good. Just add some celery. We started eating more celery too. I never know why haven't I been eating more celery? It's really good. Oh, and tuna sandwiches. I've been eating a tuna sandwich almost every week now. Really good. And the ones I buy from my campus on school, pretty good. But I also learned I got a freaking seafood cookbook just to enable my pescatarian diet. Just like, okay, pescatarian. If I'm gonna be pescatarian, I gotta learn how to cook for myself as well. Got this cookbook recipe of seafood recipes, and I learned how to make a real mean tuna salad sandwich. Just get some red onion, um, some bell pepper, get some let's see what is in it. It's wait, tuna. I want like two of them. Get some olive oil. Get some lemon, pepper, salt. Also mustard. Mustard's important. You guys chop it all up. Mix it in a bowl. Get some bread. Boom, easy. No mayo required. That's what the mustard and olive oil is for. And some lemon juice too. I guess you can also add olives and avocado. Getting hungry again. Dang it. Just remember learning to cook salmon in a bunch of different ways in the oven too. Oh, and pollock. I never eaten pollock before getting that recipe book. Pollock is pretty good, especially with that special sauce that you're supposed to make with it. What is it? It's like sauce made using honey and mustard. It's really good. Just paired with rice. It's like a freaking pollock fish Indian curry. Oh yeah, you have to use curry powder. It's really good. God dang, is it good? But yeah, I've only eaten meat just a couple of times. And also when I'm hungry, you gotta make sure you eat regardless. You can't just go not eating. It's not really healthy for you. But the funny thing is, the week after I decided to become a pescatarian, the day right before Anime Expo, I was registering my badge with my brother. There's always hot dog stands, and I forgot that I wasn't eating meat, and I bought a hot dog and I ate it. Like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to eat meat anymore. Whoops. But I didn't let that stop me. Just keep going. There'll be days you forget. Some days where you have to eat meat. That's alright. Every other day can just be fish and veggies. Gotta eat more veggies. Yeah, I really relate to this article. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm being eating less dishes, but there's always something else to eat. Thank goodness, by the place where I live, there's so many fish options. There's a food truck that sells mariscos, easy. There's a Japanese restaurant that sells sushi around the corner. Like, what? I'm living in freaking in a majority Mexican place. And yet, there it is, like an oasis in the middle of a dry desert, a sushi restaurant. It's good. Then what else? There's a Thai restaurant that I've only been there once. I gotta order from there more. They also sell fish. There's a Yoshinoya that sells fish. There's a Mexican restaurant that specializes in grilled fish and pupusas with shrimp. There's no way I cannot not eat fish. There's always an avenue to eat fish. The local meat market sells fish. I know how to cook a real mean shrimp scampi. There's the seafood soup. I know how to make clam chowder. Dang. Tuna sandwiches. Yep. Easy. Being a pescatarian is easy where I live. Alright. I guess I just stop recording right now. Oh wait, gotta read the next article. Let's see. Cowboys and vegetarians. Why an American right-wingers see beef as a birthright. Okay. In April 2021, a Daily Mail article claiming that Joe Biden planned to limit beef consumption to 4 pounds a year per person to meet environmental targets went viral, though it was totally false. It sparked a chorus among right-wing viewers that Democrats want to take want to take away your hamburgers. Politics, honestly. For many on the right, beef is a hot button issue. A Canadian pop psychologist, Jordan Peterson, who's been called custodian on the patriarch by the New Yorker, is adherent of carnivore diets. Joe Rogan, more recently in the news for agreeing with the notorious misogynist Andrew Tate, has himself promoted the lion diet. Oh no. You just hear the fucking toxic masculinity oozing from this conversation. A carnivore approaches that excuse even dairy in favor of water, salt, and meat from ruminant animals. This way of eating has been gaining traction on social media, where shirtless men proudly displaying their meals of steak, grass-fed cow butter, and duck eggs. Honestly, this is so dumb. It's like what was that one dietist? The caveman dude who eats freaking livers and testicles all day? Dude's insane. What the hell is wrong with him? That these men, he's on steroids too. That these men believe in prescribed gender roles and all-American tradition in no confidence. Recent scientific studies confirm that those of us who hold authoritarian beliefs, who seek wealth and power and support human dominance over nature, eat more meat than those who stand against equality, writes Marta Zaraska in her book Meat Hooked, The History of Science of Our 2.5 Million Year Obsession with Meat. Oh man. It's just like being that toxic being what's the word? Being that toxic about your masculinity is just, come on. You can't be like that. You gotta have like a sense of reason. It's like being chuny, but about masculinity. It's literally being like Joe Rogan and Andrew Tate are being chuny about masculinity. They gotta grow up. For these men, performative meat eating is a demonstration of virility and restraint, of power and savagery. They're literally being chuny. Oh man, it's worse when they're adults because they didn't go through their chuny phase. Oh no. You gotta snap to reality. These ideas are tied up in history of beef, something most people in the US grow up believing is an inevitable and undeniable part of our diets. A birthright. This did not happen by accident, and cultural imperialism has played a part in the beef industry since its beginnings. The cowboy, the enduring symbol of virility, affluence, and rugged America, is himself a cattle farmer. Cowboys who were responsible for herding cattle in the West from the early 1800s, when speaking English ranchers adopted the customs of Mexicans vaqueros. Until mechanization took over by the 20th century, yet their place in mythology has only grown over time. The figure in U.S. culture represents not just masculinity, control of livestock, and the dominance of the West, but the very genocide upon which the nation is built, which can't be looked at as separate from the role of meat and military strength in American ideology. Settler colonialism, the term that describes the displacement of indigenous peoples in favor of European settlers, was essential to the creation of the beef industry, as it was for many other beloved American institutions. 19th century government policies thought that the Great Plains ecosystem turned from a grass bison nomad system to a grass cattle rancher one, with the Indian Wars was a necessary step in the establishment of the rancher mythos. Oh man. Bison herds were decimated by settlers who saw them as monstrous, while cattle representation civilization, according to Joshua Speck's book Red Meat Republic, a hoof to the table history of how beef changed America. Cattle ranchers and bison hunters, supported by the U.S. military, fundamentally reshaped the Great Plains. writes Specht, expelling American Indians from the western lands and appropriating that land for use by white settlers and ranchers. Destroying bison herds was a part of an attempt to starve indigenous peoples into submission, as these were a significant part of their livelihoods, and the U.S. Army took an active role in aiding and abetting this process. Without this process of extermination and colonization, beef's emergence as a staple of American diet may not have occurred so readily. The idea that meat is as essential as air has been a part of the American project since its inception, but the popularity of beef has been manufactured and created by cultural and market forces. That makes sense. Gotta sell beef. You like got milk, got beef. Gotta like sell beef in every avenue. Like you gotta eat meat. You gotta eat meat. And inflation. Beef is expensive nowadays. I think it went up. It's a good thing I became a pescatarian because that definitely um made it cheaper to eat because you don't gotta eat beef anymore. But fish is pretty expensive too, especially salmon. God dang, salmon. Salmon's also kind of endangered. I think I read an article said that I think it was like the Nook salmon up north was in danger of being what extinct. Like this is running in really low populations. There was also chance of infertility among the salmon. So it was like salmon season was at risk of being canceled. Or it was canceled entirely. Anyways, salmon prices went up. And I think Yoshinoya is not even selling salmon anymore. I don't think I've ordered from them in a while. They're not even selling the freaking shrimp. Hmm. Come on, Yoshinoya. I don't want to eat beef bowls. I want to eat freaking salmon bowls. Salmon teriyaki. Beef's modern market dominance was also manufactured. The meat industry's marketing campaigns, including 80s and 90s advertising slogans such as "Beef is what's for dinner," spoken by strong male voices. Oh, I can just imagine. Who's that one voice actor? You know, the real deep Texan voice? Like, it was always voicing like, just the one guy who was the bull from what's the one movie called? Dang, I can't remember. It's like the one about farm animals talking. There's this one cow. There's his father who had a real tough Western market voice. Western. He was also in Family Guy, I think. He was like the new mayor because he had much of a masculine, tough Western voice he had. Beef. It's what's for dinner. I can't do it. I don't have a deep enough voice. Spoken by strong male voices, have long been funded by commodity checkoff programs that are paid into by the farmers, often to the benefit of mass manufacturers and the detriment of smaller ones. The federal government's annual subsidies of meat and animal products amount to 38 billion. Eating animal products for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is overconsumption that would have been unthinkable to previous generations and has been driven by marketing and industrial farming. I remember reading how the dairy impact was affected by subsidies back in the 80s or 90s. They were like, okay, we'll pay you to make milk. And then they made a lot of milk, the dairy farmers did. They made so much milk, in fact, that they couldn't sell all of it. In fact, they had to sell it back to the government because we made too much milk. Want to buy it back from us? It was like to bail us out. Yeah, we'll buy all the milk. So now the government has like, okay, what do we do with all this milk? There's too much milk. Okay, why don't we just make cheese? And they did. They made so much cheese that it freaking made a cheese cave. They had to store all the cheese in low, cool caves and basements. And now that's why America has the secret cheese caves. That's just filled with cheese. A secret cheese reserve, if you will. If I wonder if the economy collapses and a society is annihilated, will we start using cheese as currency because of how much we have? Look at this rock hard cheese. You want it? Yeah, we can use it as currency. That and bottle caps. What else? I was thinking of something else. Oh yeah, I remember. I think it was Franklin D. Roosevelt who I think almost had a stroke, or some US president almost had a heart attack because of his diet. And I believe it was the researchers who worked for the companies either in meat or in sugar who promoted it wasn't because of how much meat you were eating, it's because of or sugar. You're just not healthy, you're just fat. It's probably because of the fat, not the sugar or anything. You don't have to do any restrictions on sugar or anything. Okay. Let's see, where was I? Eating animal products for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is overconsumption. Okay, here. Despite the Daily Mail's claims, the industry is not under attack. The Democrats' center right policies have never dared challenge the industrial meat and dairy lobbyists. That makes very much sense. Biden has no real plans to reduce beef consumption, though it is true that people in the US are eating less and less beef. That's true. I'm not. I have barely eaten any beef. Probably because of bad press regarding greenhouse gas emissions and poor health outcomes. In fact, presidents of both parties have frequently demonstrated that they will stop at nothing to keep not just beef, but all meat plentiful. During the Obama presidency, despite gestures toward progressive environmental policies, there were pushes to speed up the poultry processing. Continued antibiotic overuse in factory and farm operations, and other issues of the meat industry that went unattended. At the start of the pandemic, Donald Trump declared meat processing critical infrastructure, keeping factories open regardless of safety. Between April 2020 and April 2021, nearly 60,000 meatpacking workers became infected with the coronavirus. Oops, done goofed. The lure of beef is so strong that even vegetarianism becomes slightly more popular. Plant-based replacements do everything they can to look as much as bloody flesh as possible. I've tried those fake burgers, and they taste like regular burgers, but honestly, if you want to eat a regular burger, just eat a real burger. It's way too processed. I remember that one South Park episode. It was like Cartman doesn't want to adopt Wendy's plan of like processed substitute meat. He was like, I don't want to eat any of that healthy crap. But then he realized, oh, it's just more processed stuff. I don't care as long as it tastes good. You're just replacing unhealthy processed crap with more unhealthy processed crap. There's no difference. It's so funny how you just accepted it in the end and it just destroyed Wendy's whole point. Like, oh, it doesn't really change anything. It's still unhealthy. Let's see. Often this seems to be given them a free pass to flourish in meat-dominated spaces. The Impossible Burger, for example, launched with chef partnerships, working with people such as David Chang and a previously vocal anti-vegetarian. It is now on menus at Burger King's, White Castle's, and Little Caesars. Little Caesars? What? What? I don't remember Little Caesars ever having like an impossible menu item. What? To be sure, I haven't eaten any Little Caesars meat products. I've only eaten like a couple of Little Caesars mushroom pizzas, supremes. They're pretty good. Gotta make sure they have olives and jalapenos on it. It's really good. Still not very healthy considering all the flour and cheese, but still pretty good. Impossible Foods' biggest selling point to it is its proprietary product, heme. Heme? What is that? Heme in meat is a protein hemoglobin in an animal's blood or myoglobin in the muscle, which is believed to give hamburgers their color and slight metallic flavor. Metallic flavor? You know, like the taste of iron? In the Impossible Foods version, the DNA of soy plants is inserted into a genetically engineered yeast and then fermented. This results in both the pink color and blood of their patties. Our relationship to meat is powerful, Saraska writes in her book, which explores how meat has not been a status symbol in gender, class, and even nationalism. If you remove the symbol, you have to make up the difference somehow. When you're no longer exerting power over animals, it helps to at least look like you could, and to eat food that resembles flesh. It is telling that its most high-profile strand of the plant-based eating movement has not been able to write new rules, but has followed the meat industry's example. It is designed to cook like meat, enabling seamless adoption by fast food restaurants. It is designed to be packaged and branded like meat, allowing for huge VC funding, akin to the subsidies that make industrial meat so excessively abundant. It all harkens back to the early days of the US meat industry rather than rethinking of the American diet. This replication relies on the same cultural ideas and industrial structures with the new addition of climate considerations. The beef industry is devastating for the planet. It drives greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, soil degradation, and excess water usage. Environmentally speaking, the rise of lab-grown meat is better than nothing, and the efforts to drive down beef consumption. But there are serious concerns about the impact of tech meat, too. Fear is that it could lead to similar issues because of the monocropping, centralized production, and singular supply chains. Yeah, it's kind of hard to make pseudo meat. You gotta have like a whole lab and everything, which makes it pretty susceptible to a monopoly, I think. Probably, most likely. Eh, yeah. I mean, who are making the Impossible Burgers? They're made in a lab. So who's making it? Who's actually making it? Who's making the Impossible Burgers? In order to meet environmental targets, the US needs to eat drastically less beef than we are currently consuming. We also need to reverse global trends. Many other countries are developing a taste for cheap cow and pork. Global meat consumption is expected to increase by 1.4 this year, which is more than the planet can handle. But as a society, we are unable to tackle our meat consumption without acknowledging that beef is more of a foodstuff when it means cowboys, masculinity, and strength, when it is literal cash cow for many, when so many in the US are committed to its significance, and when the newfangled substitutes are hooked on the old models of how meat should be sold and what it looks like. Last month, the Beard Board launched a new campaign called Together We Bring More. It promised a storytelling approach so that consumers can learn more about what beef means to them and share their own stories. With a giant advertising campaign to run during baseball games, clearly they know that beef for Americans is more than what is in your burger. Oh, yeah, it's kind of hard to just change people's diets, especially when they grow up into it. I mean, most things you brought up into it. In the culture of meat, you're gonna eat meat. Like no one's like born like I want to be a vegetarian. Like I didn't decide until it was like much later. It was just on a whim, really. Oh, the Farmer John's place shut down. I think I just a good time to just stop eating meat. Mm, yeah. Also, the right. It's a little bit too anal about their meat being touched. Really, you're willing to protect burgers, but you're not willing to protect women's rights to their body, bruh. They got their priorities all reversed. Honestly. Man, this is kind of bumming me out. I mean, how are we supposed to change people's ideas on diets? The only other way is like to increase the price, then most people won't want to buy meat. Like, as long as meat stays cheap, more and more people will buy it. If it stays more expensive, less people will buy it. But then again, people will always just end up buying stuff. I mean, my brother wanted to go to the Brazilian steakhouse, and it didn't matter how much it cost. He wanted to try Brazilian steak. The lamb was really good. Mm. That place was really fancy. It was like, um, every now and then, a waiter would bring over more meat. Would you like to try this meat? And I'd be like, yeah, keep bringing it on. And keep bringing like little small bits and pieces, but it was all you can eat. And all I did. I ate a lot of meat that day, even though I was pescatarian. They also had salmon as an option, but what's the point of going to a Brazilian steakhouse if you're not gonna eat the Brazilian steak? I had to choose it instead of the salmon. I imagine I would have enjoyed the salmon, but it wouldn't like any other salmon, I bet. There's also Wagyu beef, and it was expensive. Like $200 for a Wagyu steak. I could see the look in my brother's eyes. Yo, let me order the Wagyu steak. And I was like, bruh, no, it's not worth it. Besides, there's a Japanese restaurant right next to the door. If you wanted Wagyu beef, you could have gone there. Oh man. But yeah, Brazilian steakhouse was really good. What else did they have? The veggies were good. Got some bean and soup. What did I drink? I think it was lemonade? Or was it just water? And it was a real fancy smashy place. I felt out of place. Like, okay, we're doing the bare minimum to look the place here. To look the part that we belong here. But we all smiled and enjoyed. For the parents. Oh yeah, it was for my brother's birthday. We went to Brazilian steakhouse. Brazilian steak. But yeah, the lamb was the best part. Yeah. I mean, if people are willing to go to pay a pricey penny for Brazilian steak, people will be willing to pay decent amount of dollars for just a frank or like packaged ham meat. Oh boy, at this point, there's no way we can stop people from eating meat. The best thing we can do would probably to make everything else taste more delicious and cheap. Like if we can make veggies, fish, and every other vegetarian vegan item incredibly delicious, incredibly addicting, and make it cheap as hell, why would anyone want to eat any other option? If it's more delicious and it's cheap, then at that point they'll want to keep eating and buying that stuff. That makes sense. We're looking at this all wrong. Instead of looking to bring down meat, you gotta bring up vegetarian and vegan food. You gotta make it more delicious and cheaper. Hmm. But then people have a stigma against all those items. It's like vegetarian food and vegan food. It's reduced less. Like it's not. It can't compare. But when you really think about it, everything that gives things flavor is just spices. It doesn't matter what you eat, as long as it's seasoned well, it's delicious. Anything can be delicious with enough seasoning. Anything can be sweet with enough sugar. Yeah. So I guess that's one thing we can do. Also, I guess we should support. What if the government just like gives subsidies to like vegetarian and vegan stores? If you pump in money in those kinds of restaurants, they'll expand, they'll grow in number, they can probably make their food cheaper, and then more people will come in there and buy it. Just give people with vegetarian and vegan restaurants more options. Yeah, that sounds good. We gotta bring up vegetarian and vegan food. Also, fish food. I'm not giving up sushi. No way, no how. And I'm pretty sure most of the world will not give up sushi. Japan eats way too much fish. Like, I think it's most of Asia. They have like number one in fish consumption. Dang. I wish I lived near a fish market. I would be buying fish, fresh fish, be cooking it up, gutting it. Knife goes in, guts come out. Knife goes in, guts come out. Mmm. Man, I'm getting hungry. Oh, that was just me reading the material I needed to do for my homework. Alrighty then. Well, time to actually go start writing stuff. But there's no point in recording that, I think. Nah. Right, that's it. Thank you very much.